Right.
And then once that person
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Amnon Kruvi. A little bit about myself before I get started. I'm the solution architect at a consultancy called 1218 Global. We work mainly in the recruitment and staffing industries. And I'm here to talk to you about invocable methods. Now,
sorry, someone must have hacked my... it's not quitting. Okay, fine. Here's a song from my heart. I think it's a perfect start for my show about invocable methods. Don't be scared, it's no joke. No, I'm not having a stroke. Let's begin with a useful presentation. See, here's my apex. It's a trigger updating contacts, and it's all in code. But let's look down the road. Heal the org, make it a better place for Rob and for Kieran, the entire user base. There are all these admins who cannot reuse what you're writing. Make a better org for you and for me. If they want years away to add a record type, let's say, but they need your functionality to skip it. No, they can't without code. Change the operating mode. Call the dev and wait a month until they finish. But if you happen to have used the flow for your function, they can change the step and add another check. Heal the org, make it a better place for Rob and for Kieran, the entire user base. There are all these admins who cannot reuse what you're writing. Make a better org for you and for me. You can call your method in a process on a record change. Make a quick form in a flow and add it to the record page. And if you want your classes to be run at a certain time, you can easily add to your processes scheduled actions. If you want to erase that trigger from your code base, you can automate your system. Put an at the top, then invocable method. Don't forget to add a label and description. Now, what we've done here is allow the code to be running, just a normal flow, and process builder grow. Heal the org, make it a better place for Bob and for Kieran, the entire user base. There are all these admins who cannot reuse what writing. Make a better org for you and for me. Right, my friend. Thank you.
If you like that, with my laughing and everything in the middle, then welcome to this musical experience about invocable methods. We're going to start like any good musical by introducing our characters. On the one hand, we have our developers, and that's us guys. You and you and you and you and all of us, these are the developers. And on the other hand, we have the system administrator. And the sysadmin, a little bit about them. So the sysadmin is often the source of dev requirement. What do I mean? They're the person who sits with the business, who has to hear everyone complain about what works and what doesn't work. And they're the ones who usually come, you know what? We can use a developer for that. They're very good with declarative tools, process builder, flows, workflows, etc. But as far as they're concerned, us developers, all we do is sit around all day and read Reddit. Now, the developer, as developers, we can achieve all this complex functionality using Apex code, things that you obviously can't do with process builder and flow. But we're also an expensive and slower resource. And why is that? Because we're bound to all these processes. We have QA, we have sprints. A sprint is 2 weeks long, right? So imagine if you had to wait 2 weeks for every little change that you wanted. And of course, it doesn't help that we spend all day on Reddit. And that created a sort of animosity between the software developer and the admin. It lasted so long, no one can remember how it even started, and they call it the 1024-year war. Now, obviously, we're not here to say development is bad. Code is awesome. We can do all these complicated things, and we have this fine control over performance. So if you ever wanted to use, for example, a map in flows, good luck. You have to iterate and until you get what you want. And for us, it's quite often a lot easier to write code than to faff about in process builder. You know, some things you can just write 3 lines of code and deploy it. But when it comes to the admin, it takes weeks to get every tiny thing that they need. They have to submit a request, it has to go to a sprint, and estimate it, and all of that stuff. And every little change that they need, so if someone didn't understand what they wanted the first time, you have to go through the whole thing again. Not to mention that because admins can't often read code, it's less visible to them. They don't really understand what is happening and why. So our software developer decided to climb up to the very far reaches of the earth to try and find a solution. And up there, in a magical castle, in the most frozen place on the planet, they found the Code Jedi. Jedi, what can I do to finally put an end to this war? Compromise, you should. My bad Yoda impression, forgive me. And what do I mean by compromise? Let's pretend that we had a way where we can still write code that handles all these complicated things that only code can, but our system admin can still orchestrate and control the orchestration of the code. That means that they can change parameters, they can add additional checks, and that also means that we can use the admins as another resource in our pool. Just because we're a company that develops a product or develops a system doesn't mean we need to leave the admins behind. Imagine if, well, right now, every time you need to do something, they call upon you, the developer, but what if the admin could take some of that effort and do it themselves? And that's where invocable methods come into play. So invocable methods are just regular code methods and functions that you can use inside a flow or inside a process. They need to be accessible, and they need to be static. That means they need to be public or global. If you're an ISV and you're writing a managed package, it needs to be global if you want other people to use it. All you have to do to make a method invocable is add this annotation, invocable method, then you add a label, then you add a description. The label and description show up in Process Builder, so the admin doesn't need to see the actual name of the method, which is often in camel case, but they can see a proper English label of what that method does. Methods can also accept parameters. Now, invocable methods have to be bulkified, meaning they can only accept a list of parameters. So if your parameter is a string, you need to accept a list of strings. That's because if you run a process for 5 records in one time, you get all the inputs from all 5 records in one go, and you need to return the results in the same fashion as a list. But even though you can only accept one input parameter in your method, that input parameter can be a custom class that you build. That class can have multiple members to it, And if you annotate those members with invocable variable, and you can give them a label and a required parameter as well, then in Process Builder, you will see multiple different input fields. And in Flow, you'll see multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So as I said, the method can return a value. Again, it needs to be a list. So for the first string input that you get, the first result needs to match that input. In Flows, you can use the output options and assign them to variables, use them on, do whatever you want. In Process Builder, I don't think you can actually use the output variables anywhere, but you can still execute the Apex. But even after all this, the developer just wasn't convinced, couldn't remember how all of this worked. So the Jedi said,
the code I write on my laptop tonight, full of triggers and settings. A program in isolation can only change it from within. The client said that this will never change again. But you know that's false. It's time to use your brain. Don't let them win, don't let them say that our coding is the only way. Expose methods so they will know to use the flow. Let it flow. There's no excuse anymore. Let it flow, let it flow. Let the admins use your code. If you say change one day, you make your admin strong. Change that's never bothered them anyway. It's funny how some people who want code to do it all, but they get upset when others complain about control. It's time to see what they can do when we give them the proper tools. Let's change request for silly things, which means let it flow, let it flow. Be one with declarative tools. Let it flow, let it flow, and make your admin through. If you say this may change one day, make your admin strong. Your method needs to work with just a single list, but it can take instead a custom class with many fields. It's bulkified so you can execute it fast. If you can manage, put triggers in the past. Let it flow, let it flow. Become an admin champion. Let it flow, let it flow. And declare the problem gone. If this may change one day, make your admin strong. Change that's never bothered them anyway.
This is actually a lot harder than it seems. I practiced at home for weeks now, but I never accounted for the laughing. But thank you, it's awesome. Now, yes, I've been playing up invocable methods for a while now, but the question must be asked, is it really the Jesus, the second coming of of software to solve all of our problems? And the answer is no. It's not all sunshine and butterflies. In terms of performance, invocable methods are pretty much on par with code triggers if your context is not too large. What I've found is that after you hit 200 records, because Salesforce batches every DML operation with 200 records, when you hit that limit, it chokes. And when I mean chokes, I'm talking about a 2-second delay that counts against your Apex CPU time governor limit. So use it carefully within contexts that are relatively small. And also, we don't have all the same context as triggers do. So a trigger has the before and after context. With flows and processes, we can only use after. We also don't have delete and undelete options at all. So we can't run a process when a record is deleted, we can't run a process when it's undeleted, and we can't run a process before an insert or update to create changes to the record that we're inserting into the database. So even though we're only covering 25% of those scenarios, when it comes to our system admin, are going to appreciate it still. Now, do we have time for a quick demo? Todd? Yeah, cool. Right. So, I'm going to show you guys a code class. And what this code class does, let me know if you can see it. Oh, no? Okay. Perfect. So what we're looking at here is a class with an invocable method in it. Now, we can only have one invocable method per class. So if you need more, you just create another class. It doesn't cost you anything. You'll notice that this is just regular Apex code. It's a method called getTimeZoneDelta. It receives a list of locations. And location is just an internal class that I've made that we can see right here. It has 3 members to it. It has a date, it has a country, it has a city, where date is required. And it returns a list of time zone results, which is another internal class, with a delta, time zone, and local time. And all this code does, it gets the time zone for a particular city and country at a particular date, and it returns the name of the time zone, TZ get display name, the offset in hours, and the formatted current local time in that time zone, right? And now, just because I've put the invocable method in it, if we look at the flow builder, here under Apex, we have this action, this additional action that we can use called invocable time zone. And I can drag it into my flow. I've already dragged it here. And here are my inputs. Date is required, so I have to put a value there. That's why I can't select anything else here. City and country are not required, so I can add information from a contact record. Contact mailing city, contact mailing country, and today's date. And I'm going to take the outputs of that method and put them in 3 separate variables. And what I'm going to do with those variables is just show them on a screen. Here I have a screen with just an output text that tells us what the time zone is of a particular contact and what their local time is, more importantly. And if we open up a contact, I've added that flow right here to the corner, and you can see my time zone where I live, and you can see the local time where I am. And this is obviously very handy if you have people, if you communicate with people in all sorts of different countries. And anyone who's ever tried working with time zones knows that formulas, for example, can't do this. You have to faff about with formulas just to get a proper time zone. So what we've done is, without any sort of Lightning component development, without any sort of UI development, we've created a simple flow that converts the time zone and displays the time zone by country according to the user that I'm looking at. And I've used one very short invocable method to do it. That's pretty much what I have to show for you today. Any questions? Sorry? Right. Any questions about invocable methods? Michael Bublé and I are currently working on it. I hear he's out of the cave. Have I covered invocable methods completely? So thoroughly that no one has any single question? In that case, perfect. I'll leave the stage back to Todd.